Tonight, before the noise of the day fades completely, before your mind drifts into rest, there is a sacred moment available to you. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is quiet, tender, and deeply spiritual. Heaven leans close in these moments. The Holy Spirit does not force his way into your night, he waits to be invited, and when he is welcomed, he works while you sleep. There are prayers that move mountains during the day, but there are prayers whispered at night that move the heart of God in a different way. Night prayers are honest. They are unguarded. They come from a place where strength has ended and surrender begins, and it is here, in this place of rest, that the Holy Spirit longs to minister to you. The first prayer is a prayer of surrender, not the kind spoken out of habit, but the kind that comes when you release control. You tell the Holy Spirit, I give you everything I could not fix today. I release the thoughts that kept me awake, the worries that followed me, the fears I could not silence. This prayer is not weakness, it is trust. When you surrender your unfinished business, your unanswered questions, and your weary heart, the Holy Spirit begins to work where you no longer can. He brings order to confusion. He brings peace where anxiety once lived. He moves in ways you will recognize only later. The second prayer is a prayer of invitation. You say, Holy Spirit, stay with me through the night, not as words spoken into the air, but as a sincere longing. You invite him into your dreams, into your subconscious, into the hidden places of your soul. The Holy Spirit is gentle, but he is powerful. While your body rests, he speaks. He heals memories. He aligns your spirit. He prepares answers before you even wake up with questions. When you invite him, your sleep becomes sacred ground. The third prayer is a prayer of expectancy. You tell the Holy Spirit, I believe you are working even now. This prayer releases faith into the unseen. You may not feel anything, you may not see anything change immediately, but faith does not depend on feelings. While you sleep, God arranges divine appointments, shifts circumstances, softens hearts, and opens doors that no human effort could open. Expectancy keeps your spirit open to receive what heaven is already preparing. Many people wake up tired because they carried burdens into the night that were never meant to go with them. But when you pray these prayers, your rest becomes different. Your spirit breathes. Your soul settles. You awaken with clarity you did not have before, with peace you cannot explain, with strength that did not come from sleep alone. The Holy Spirit is not limited by time or consciousness. He does some of his most beautiful work when you are still. When the world is quiet, his voice becomes clear. When your striving stops, his power begins. Tonight, do not rush past that moment before sleep. Pause, whisper your surrender, offer your invitation, rest in expectancy. And as you close your eyes, remember this, you are never alone in the night. The Spirit of God watches over you, works within you, and prepares tomorrow while you sleep today. Night prayers create a sacred space where surrender replaces striving, and this space is unlike any other moment in the day. When the night falls, the demands of performance, explanation, and control begin to loosen their grip. The world no longer asks you to prove anything. In this quiet hour, the soul becomes honest, because it is tired of pretending to be strong. Night prayer is not about eloquence or structure, it is about presence. It is the moment when the heart stops negotiating and simply opens. In this sacred stillness, striving loses its voice, and surrender becomes natural rather than forced. Throughout the day, striving feels necessary. You strive to be understood, to be productive, to be sufficient. You strive to fix what is broken and manage what feels uncertain. But night prayer gently interrupts this cycle. It reminds you that your strength was never the source of your peace. As you kneel or lie still, the Holy Spirit meets you not in your effort, but in your release. Surrender at night is not an act of defeat. It is an act of trust that says you no longer need to carry what was never meant to be carried alone. There is something deeply spiritual about letting go when the day is done. At night, distractions fade and defenses fall. The heart speaks without rehearsal. You begin to notice how much energy was spent holding things together and how little is required to place them in God's hands. In this moment, surrender is not dramatic. It is quiet and complete. You stop rehearsing conversations. You stop reliving mistakes. You stop planning every possible outcome. The Holy Spirit enters this stillness and begins to work where striving once dominated. When striving ends, listening begins. The soul becomes sensitive again. Night prayer does not demand answers, it creates room for alignment. The Holy Spirit does not need long explanations to understand you. He responds to the posture of the heart. A surrendered heart speaks louder than 1,000 anxious words. In that sacred space, peace does not have to be chased, it settles naturally. Rest becomes more than physical, it becomes spiritual. This is why night prayers are so powerful. They are not rushed, they are not performed. They are offered when the soul is unguarded. Surrender at night teaches the heart a new rhythm, one that does not depend on effort or control. Over time, this rhythm begins to shape your inner life. You start to recognize that peace comes more easily when you stop striving sooner. Trust deepens because you have learned, night after night, that God works even when you are still. In this sacred space, the Holy Spirit gently rearranges priorities, softens hardened places, and quiets inner noise. What felt heavy during the day begins to lose its weight. What felt urgent begins to find its proper place. The soul learns that surrender is not a moment but a posture, one that grows stronger each night it is practiced. Releasing control before sleep allows the Holy Spirit to work freely, because control is often the greatest barrier between the soul and divine peace. During the day, control feels like protection. It feels necessary to manage outcomes, monitor thoughts, and guard emotions. But when night arrives, control becomes a burden rather than a shield. The body grows tired, yet the mind resists rest, replaying conversations, predicting outcomes, and holding tightly to unresolved concerns. Night prayer invites you to loosen that grip, not through force, but through trust. Letting go before sleep is an act of faith that goes beyond words. It is the quiet decision to place every unfinished thought into God's hands. You acknowledge that you have reached the end of your ability, and instead of resisting that limit, you embrace it. The Holy Spirit responds to this release because He is not drawn to human control, but to human dependence. When you stop trying to manage everything, space is created for Him to move in ways you could never orchestrate. Control often disguises itself as responsibility. You tell yourself that if you don't think it through one more time, something will go wrong. Yet this constant mental effort only multiplies anxiety. Releasing control before sleep is not neglect, it is alignment. It is recognizing that God does not sleep and does not need your vigilance to remain faithful. As you surrender the night, the Holy Spirit begins to calm the nervous system, quiet the mind, and steady the heart. There is a sacred exchange that happens when control is released. You give up your need to predict tomorrow, and in return, peace enters your rest. The Holy Spirit works best in an atmosphere of trust, not tension. When you say, even silently, that you no longer need to understand everything before you rest, you invite divine order into your inner world. Thoughts slow down, breathing deepens, the soul settles into a posture of safety rather than survival. Many people struggle to sleep, not because they lack faith, but because they struggle to relinquish control. Night after night, the same worries follow them into bed, draining energy and hope. But when you intentionally release control, you begin to experience a different kind of rest. Sleep becomes an act of worship, a declaration that God is capable even when you are unconscious. The Holy Spirit takes what you release and begins to work in the unseen spaces of your life. In the stillness of the night, free from human effort, the Holy Spirit rearranges thoughts, heals emotional strain, and brings clarity where confusion once lingered. You may not feel His work in the moment, but you often wake with a sense of peace that cannot be explained by circumstances. This is the fruit of releasing control. It teaches the soul that rest is not earned by effort, but received through trust, and that divine work continues even when human striving ends. Inviting the Holy Spirit into the night transforms rest into spiritual alignment, because night is not an empty pause between days, but a continuation of your spiritual life. Many people think of sleep as a shutdown, a time when nothing meaningful happens, yet the spirit remains awake even when the body rests. 2. And you intentionally invite the Holy Spirit into your night. You acknowledge that God is present in every moment, not only when you are active and aware. The night has a way of stripping life down to what is essential. Distractions fade, voices grow quiet, and the soul becomes more honest. This is why invitation matters so deeply at night. The Holy Spirit never intrudes, He responds to welcome. When you consciously say, in prayer or in your heart, that He is welcome in your rest, your sleep becomes more than recovery for the body. It becomes a space of alignment, where the inner life is gently brought back into order. Spiritual alignment happens when the soul returns to its proper posture of dependence and trust. Throughout the day, misalignment often occurs without notice. Thoughts drift, emotions become heavy, and priorities shift under pressure. At night, the Holy Spirit patiently realigns what the day has distorted. When invited, He brings your thoughts into harmony with truth, your emotions into balance, and your spirit into rest. This work is subtle but powerful, unfolding beyond conscious effort. There is a difference between sleeping and resting in God. Sleep restores energy, but spiritual rest restores perspective. When the Holy Spirit is welcomed into the night, rest becomes a holy exchange. You offer your stillness, and He offers His presence. You release tension, and He brings peace. In this exchange, the soul learns to trust again, not because circumstances have changed, but because the heart has been recentered. Many struggle with rest because their inner world remains misaligned even when the body lies still. The mind continues racing, the heart remains guarded, and the spirit feels unsettled. Inviting the Holy Spirit into the night addresses this deeper unrest. He moves beneath the surface, calming fears, softening resistance, and bringing quiet assurance. This alignment cannot be forced. It happens only in the presence of surrender and invitation. As this practice becomes familiar, the night begins to feel different. Darkness no longer represents isolation or vulnerability, but closeness and care. The soul recognizes that it is being held even while unaware. Waking becomes gentler, marked by clarity rather than confusion. The Holy Spirit's work during the night leaves traces of peace that carry into the morning, shaping attitudes, responses, and expectations. Inviting the Holy Spirit into the night teaches the soul that alignment is not achieved through effort, but through relationship. It is not about striving to feel spiritual, but about allowing God to be present in every layer of life, even in sleep. Over time, this invitation becomes less of a ritual and more of a posture, a quiet awareness that God is near in every moment, including the unseen hours of the night. While the body sleeps, the spirit heals, instructs, and prepares the soul in ways that human effort can never accomplish. Sleep places the body in stillness, but the spirit remains open and receptive. In this quiet state, defenses are lowered, and the soul becomes teachable. The Holy Spirit does not depend on your awareness to work, He depends on your availability. When you rest, He moves gently and precisely, touching areas that are often inaccessible during the busyness of the day. Healing often begins where awareness ends. During waking hours, pain is frequently masked by activity and distraction. At night, when the mind grows quiet, buried wounds surface not to harm you, but to be healed. The Spirit moves through memory, emotion, and desire, bringing restoration without force. He soothes what has been strained, softens what has hardened, and repairs what has been neglected. This healing is not rushed, it is patient, unfolding in the safe. Why of rest? Instruction also takes place in the stillness of sleep. The Spirit teaches not through lectures, but through impressions, clarity, and gentle direction. Sometimes this instruction comes through dreams, sometimes through a sense of knowing that greets you upon waking. You may rise with insight you did not have before, or with a settled conviction about a decision that once felt uncertain. This is the Spirit preparing the soul, aligning it with wisdom that does not originate from reasoning alone. Preparation is one of the Spirit's quiet works at night. While you sleep, He orders tomorrow in unseen ways. He strengthens your inner life for challenges you have not yet faced. He prepares your heart for conversations you have not yet had. He shapes your responses before situations even arise. This preparation is not dramatic, but it is effective, building resilience, discernment, and peace beneath the surface of consciousness. Many underestimate what happens during sleep because they equate productivity with visibility. Yet some of the most profound spiritual work occurs in hiddenness. The Spirit values rest because rest signals trust. When you sleep, you declare that you believe God can work without your supervision. This trust gives Him freedom to move deeply and thoroughly, addressing roots rather than symptoms. As the Spirit heals, instructs, and prepares the soul, rest becomes transformative. You may awaken with a lighter heart, a clearer mind, or a renewed sense of purpose without knowing exactly why. These subtle shifts are evidence of unseen work completed in the night. Over time, this process reshapes the inner life, making the soul more responsive and less reactive. Sleeping with this awareness changes how you approach rest. Sleep becomes an offering rather than an escape. The bed becomes a place of surrender rather than worry. The night becomes a partner in spiritual growth rather than an interruption. The Spirit continues His work faithfully, night after night, shaping the soul in quiet ways that gradually become visible in daily life. Expectancy in prayer activates unseen divine movement through the night, because faith is not limited to what the eyes can see or the mind can measure. When you pray with expectancy before sleep, you are not demanding results. You are opening space for God to act. This posture of faith acknowledges that divine activity does not pause when human awareness fades. Instead, it continues beyond consciousness, working in realms untouched by effort or observation. Many approach prayer at night with resignation rather than expectation. They pray because they are tired, because they have no other option, or because the day has left them empty. But expectancy changes the atmosphere of prayer. It shifts the heart from helplessness to trust. When you lie down believing that God is already moving, even without evidence, the soul rests differently. Faith settles the inner world, calming the need for immediate answers. Expectant prayer is rooted in confidence, not certainty. It does not require understanding how God will move, only the belief that He will. This belief releases the need to monitor outcomes. The Holy Spirit responds to this trust by working in hidden ways, aligning circumstances, softening resistance, and opening paths that cannot be forced. Through expectancy, prayer becomes partnership rather than pleading. The night is uniquely suited for this kind of faith. Darkness removes visual confirmation, training the soul to rely on trust alone. As the body sleeps, expectancy remains active, holding space for divine movement. God works beyond time, beyond physical limits, and beyond awareness. What seems delayed or impossible during the day often finds motion in the quiet hours of the night. Unseen divine movement does not announce itself with noise. It unfolds silently, rearranging details and preparing outcomes before you are even aware of the need. Hearts are touched, decisions are influenced, opportunities are positioned, protection is released. All of this occurs without interruption, without exhaustion, and without your involvement. Expectancy allows this work to happen without interference. When you pray with expectancy, sleep becomes an act of faith. You rest not because everything is resolved, but because you trust that God is resolving what you cannot. This kind of rest protects the heart from despair and the mind from fear. It anchors the soul in hope, even when circumstances remain unchanged. Over time, expectancy reshapes how you experience both night and morning. You begin to wake with quiet assurance rather than anxiety. You sense that something has shifted, even if you cannot name it. This confidence does not come from visible evidence, but from repeated experiences of God's faithfulness during unseen hours. Expectancy keeps the heart open to receive what God is already doing. It prevents cynicism from closing the soul and fear from dominating rest. In the stillness of the night, Expectancy stands guard, trusting that divine movement is already in motion, shaping outcomes that will be revealed in time. Waking in peace is often the result of what the Holy Spirit did while you slept, because rest is not merely the absence of activity, but the presence of divine order within the soul. Many people measure sleep by hours, yet true rest is measured by what rises with you in the morning. When peace greets you before thoughts begin racing, it reveals that something deeper than physical rest has taken place during the night. The Holy Spirit works quietly, without drawing attention to himself, while the mind disengages and the body lie still. He restores balance where the day created strain. Emotional weight is lifted not through effort, but through gentle realignment. Anxieties that once felt heavy lose their intensity. Thoughts that were tangled begin to make sense. This inner peace is not accidental. It is the fruit of unseen spiritual labor. Often, you do not remember the moment peace arrived. You only know that it is there when you wake. This is because the Spirit works beyond conscious awareness. He moves beneath surface thoughts, addressing the roots of unrest rather than the symptoms. What you carried to bed no longer feels as heavy in the morning, not because circumstances changed, but because your inner posture did. Waking in peace also prepares you for the day ahead. Peace is not passive, it is strengthening. It steadies reactions, sharpens discernment, and protects the heart from being easily disturbed. The Holy Spirit equips you during sleep with the emotional and spiritual readiness needed for what lies ahead. You may encounter challenges, but you meet them from a place of calm rather than fear. Many people wake already tense because the night was filled with worry rather than trust. But when the Holy Spirit is given space to work while you sleep, the morning atmosphere shifts. Peace becomes the starting point rather than something to chase. This peace does not depend on perfect circumstances. It flows from alignment, from the soul being set in order while the body rested. The consistency of this experience deepens faith. As you recognize the pattern of waking in peace, trust grows. You begin to anticipate rest differently, approaching the night not with dread or mental noise, but with expectancy. Sleep becomes a doorway rather than an escape, a transition where divine work continues uninterrupted. Peace also influences how you relate to others. A rested soul responds with grace instead of irritation. Words are chosen more carefully. Patience comes more easily. The work of the Holy Spirit during the night extends beyond personal comfort and begins to shape interactions throughout the day. Over time, waking in peace becomes a testimony without words. It reflects a life learning to yield, to trust, and to rest in God's presence. The night no longer feels like a vulnerable gap, but a protected space where the Spirit watches, works, and restores, leaving behind a quiet strength that carries you forward into the day.